A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. When Judas had left them, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and God will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. I give you a new commandment: love one another. As I have loved you, so you also should love one another. This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." The Gospel of the Lord. In Lewis Carroll's story, Alice in Wonderland, he tells of a conversation between Alice and the Cheshire Cat. "Would you please tell me," asks Alice, "which way I ought to go from here?" The Cheshire Cat replies, "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to." "Well," says Alice, "I don't much care where." To which the Cheshire Cat replies, "Then it doesn't matter which way you go." Without some purpose, her journey's meaningless. What is the ultimate purpose of our lives? What's the reason we get up every day? What fundamentally drives and motivates us? Viktor Frankl, the famous psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, he once said that today clinics are crowded with people suffering from a new kind of sickness, a sense of total and ultimate meaninglessness of life. We live in the United States, one of the wealthiest countries in the history of the world, and it is dominated by materialism, by consumerism. Turn on the news, open a newspaper. Anytime there's a crisis, it usually involves the stock market. We live in a culture committed to materialism, on consuming things: money, wealth, celebrity, sex, status. Our value is in what we have, how much and how many. Our purpose in life is rooted in the marketplace. It's become the primary source of meaning for our lives. Do you know the number one reason divorced couples state for the failure of their marriage? Finances. We're consummate consumers. We're constantly consuming food, music, television, computers, cell phones, social media, the latest gossip, even one another. We use other people. We try to set ourselves above them. We treat people like things. Consuming has become the national religion. Yet the more we try to fill ourselves with everything and anything imaginable, the more empty we feel. The other day I came across a post from a teenage girl on social media. She was the friend of a friend of a friend. I'd like to read part of it. I'm 14, almost 15, and well, I'm majorly depressed. I have no life. I mean, come on. I have no friends. I'm picked on because I'm UAF, which in teenage internet lingo is ugly as bleep. She goes on, "Soccer practice is bad. My parents are always yelling at me. I stay in my room and I think of ways to end my life. I tried hanging myself once, but I just couldn't go through with it. I'm supposedly Christian, but I don't even understand what that means. I've researched other religions and they all seem fake. I live my life in the dark. I'm lost in this world and I know I'll never understand it. All I think about now is dying. My grades in school are bleep. I don't do any work. The teachers hate me. I don't know why I'm here." When Mother Teresa visited the United States to receive an honorary degree from Harvard University, she said, "This is the poorest place I've ever been in my life." This woman, who had worked in the slums of India who had seen children dying of starvation in the streets, said this was the poorest place she had ever seen in her life. How can that be? Because she wasn't talking about material poverty, but about something so much worse. Poverty of the soul. This is that terrible emptiness in the human heart, without meaning, without purpose. And there are so many people out there that don't know the meaning of their lives. There's people in your schools, I promise you, among your friends, at work, even in your own homes, who are in darkness, so lost and so empty and so alone. In the next 24 hours, over 1,400 teenagers will attempt suicide. And I just heard on the radio last night, the number of girls successfully committing suicides has just surpassed boys. Over 15,000 will use drugs for the first time. It's better to be numb than to be empty. We're lost in this maze of meaninglessness, and we don't know who we are. Thoreau said modern men live lives of quiet desperation, and this was never more true than for the people of our time. They're desperate because deep inside is a longing, the most fundamental of hungers that is unassuaged and unfulfilled. In the gospel today, Jesus has just been betrayed. One of those men with whom he had shared the first Eucharist, whose feet he had washed and embraced, whom he'd called to be one of his most intimate companions, who he'd entrusted with incredible responsibility, has betrayed him. And what is the response of Jesus? Now is the Son of Man glorified. The cross is a certainty. The hours come. Christ is betrayed. The Messiah will be nailed to the tree. Men will put God to death. And Jesus says, now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. How can he say this? How can this most shameful of acts be a source of glory? Because through the greatest evil ever perpetrated at the hands of men, God would bring about the greatest miracle in the history of his creation. Through the most awful instrument of torture and death ever conceived by the human imagination, Christ will reveal to the world its true meaning: divine love. And so in anticipation of his being raised on the cross, Jesus commands his disciples, I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. What is the meaning and purpose of human life? To become images and living witnesses of Christ's love revealed through the cross. This is the love and the truth and the meaning that hearts are dying for. This is the love that the world's dying to see. They want to be convinced. In their dark despair and anxious desperation, they're crying for someone to convince them, to show them there's something more to life, some truer purpose, some deeper meaning, some bright, piercing truth that will lift them up out of the shadows. And we have it. We have that truth. We profess it every Sunday. But if we simply hang these words on a wall, if they're nothing more than a noble epithet, then they're meaningless. Love one another as I have loved you. It has to be lived and incarnated in the relationships of our daily lives. It has to be present in the struggles of our marriage. It has to be present with the difficulties with our children. It has to be present in the struggles and the conflicts at work. It has to be present in the bullying and the striving and the pressure of school with our friends. It has to be present when we meet the poor and the suffering on the streets. If it's not present in our daily lives, it's dead. Love one another as I have loved you. How do we do this? How do we love like this? There's only one way. We have to be willing to die. And I'm not talking about physical death. We have to be willing to die every day. To our pride, to our lust, to our thirst for power, to our need to always be in the first place, our need to always be right, to always have the last word. Love is a willingness to die for the good of the other. That's why Jesus says, unless the grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it's just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And this is the fruit of divine love. This is the light the world is longing to see. That lamp that's hung on high, that shines in the darkness. Love one another as I have loved you. This is the meaning they're all searching for out there. Will we show them?